Welcome back to CIA Declassified. Imagine that you are standing on a salt flat in the Mojave as the sun dips below the horizon. The year is 1958, and the world is defined by the scream of the turbine. To everyone in this era, a jet is a monster of noise, a thunderclap that can be heard for 20 miles. But today, the rules are changing. You look up expecting the bone rattling roar of a Pratt and Whitney engine, but there is only a faint metallic rustle. Above you, a dark, sleek shape. The QT2 quiet thruster slices through the air at 500 feet. It is a ghost in the machine. The heat still radiates from the cracked earth beneath your boots, a dry, baking warmth that smells of dust and ancient minerals. You feel the vibration before you hear anything, a subtle rhythmic pulsing in your chest, like a distant heartbeat. Then the shape appears, a matte black silver against the violet sky. So low you could swear you see the rivets. There is no traditional jet wash, no scorching heat trail that blurs the horizon. Instead, there is only the laminar flow of air over polished wings, a sound so delicate it is swallowed by the crunch of sand under your shifting weight. You are standing in a pocket of silence that shouldn't exist in a world of industrial thunder. In the nearby control trailer, the air is thick with the scent of ozone and the sharp chemical tang of developer fluid from the latest reconnaissance film. You watch as a technician, his forehead beaded with sweat, adjusts a massive frequency analyzer. Its green cathode ray tube flickering with the jagged lines of a sound that is being surgically erased. Every breath you take feels heavy, laden with the knowledge that you are a mile from a multi-ton weapon of war. Yet if you closed your eyes, you'd think you were alone in the wilderness. This is the acoustic mirage, the terrifying reality that the sky is no longer a warning, but a hiding place. The setting is the Groom Lake facility, a place that doesn't officially exist on any map. In the hangars, engineers in short sleeved white shirts and horn rimmed glasses are huddled over blueprints, whispering about acoustic signatures and exhaust turbulence. This is the era of the deep overflight, where the U 2 flies so high it's a speck, but the CIA wants something even bolder, a plane that can fly so low it can see the color of a Soviet sentry's eyes and yet remain as silent as the clouds. You are witnessing the birth of K-39. You can feel the tension of the Sputnik crisis hanging over every conversation. The pressure to innovate is suffocating. In this windowless world of black projects, the loudest thing in the room is the silence of a secret. The atmosphere is heavy with the realization that if they fail, a pilot is a dead man in a loud box. If they succeed, they own the night. This is the quest to master the silent sky. Why the name? Within the internal nomenclature of the Office of Scientific Intelligence, K was a prefix often assigned to aeronautical kill noise initiatives. Records from the Air Force logistics chains indicate that K-39 got its name from the 39-point decibel reduction target set by the original project lead. It was an invention of great proportions, the formal recognition that acoustic stealth was just as vital as radar invisibility. The goal was to reach a point where the ambient noise of a city would drown out the passage of a jet at an altitude of just 1,000 feet. To understand a ghost, you don't look at the sky. You look at the acoustic logs in the basement of the Pentagon. Let's pull back the curtain on the verifiable data of this atmospheric heist. Project K-39 was a joint effort between the CIA and the Office of Naval Research. The project focused on exhaust nozzle manipulation to reduce the jet bark. It utilized the Schweitzer glider airframe as a baseline for quiet testing. The project utilized composite propeller blades to reduce the tip stall noise. K-39 was managed by the same team that oversaw the Oxcart program. I have an episode on that. The project utilized porous leading edges on wings to soften the sound of wind shear. It tested a bypass engine design that mixed cool air with hot exhaust to dampen sound. The project utilized acoustic liners made of high temperature ceramic within the engine housing. K-39 identified that engine vibration was more detectable than airflow noise at low speeds. The program tested the Yo 3A. It's either Yo 3A or YO 3A. I'm not familiar with it. It's a plane known as the Quiet Star in the late stages of the project. Operatives used audio sensors planted in the desert to track the plane's noise from miles away. The CIA produced a silence manual for pilots to optimize glide path operations. Subsonic flight profiles were the only way to achieve the K-39 silence goals. K-39 analysts studied bird wing structure to understand natural silence in flight. Forged civilian test flights were used as a cover for K-39 activity near public airspaces. The project maintained a sound vault containing the acoustic prints of every Soviet radar station. Analysts tracked the atmospheric humidity because it affected how sound traveled in the ground. K-39 utilized Teflon-coated engine parts to reduce the mechanical friction noise. The project cost an estimated $14 million in 1959 currency. Psychological warfare teams believed a silent plane would have a demoralizing effect on enemies. The CIA developed instant kill switches for engine lights to ensure total visual and audio blackout. K-39 utilized surreptitious flights over the California coast to test sea level detection. The program used liquid-cooled exhaust systems to hide the infrared signature along with the noise. Operatives salted the flight paths with decoys to confuse ground-based listeners. The CIA paid for noise complaints studies in local towns to see if anyone noticed the test flights. K-39 scripts for pilots included emergency silence procedures for engine failure. The project utilized variable pitch propellers that could be adjusted mid-flight for quietness. Analysts used frequency analyzers to find the sweet spot where a jet sounded like a gust of wind. K-39 created acoustic camouflage by mimicking the sound frequency of local insects. The CIA used balloon-borne microphones to test noise levels at high altitudes. Operation Quiet Night was the internal code for the final field test in Vietnam. The project utilized specialized fuel that burned cleaner and quieter than standard kerosene. K-39 operatives were trained in glider tactics to approach targets with the engine off. The CIA used laser-based vibration sensors to monitor engine health without adding weight. Quiet overflight was officially listed as high priority intelligence requirement. K-39 files were often cross-referenced with bird migration patterns for cover. The program used fake flight plans to hide the plane's true point of origin. Operatives used earplugs specifically designed to hear the subtle changes in a silent engine. The CIA maintained a database of urban noise baselines for every major Soviet city. K-39 utilized low-light cameras that functioned better without the vibration of a loud engine. The program created synthetic sound shadows where the plane's noise was directed upward. Analysts tracked the wind speed as it was the primary factor in masking the plane's hiss. K-39 used magnetic bearings in a few prototypes to eliminate metal-on-metal noise. The project used forged logbooks to claim the planes were just experimental gliders. CIA Technical Services developed a muffler that reduced exhaust noise by 75%. K-39 used hidden air intakes to reduce the whistle of incoming air. The program utilized civilian contractors from the Lockheed Skunk Works. CIA psychologists developed stealth discipline to keep pilots from making radio contact. K-39 utilized timed overflights to coincide with local thunder or heavy rain. The project used acoustic foam in the cockpit to protect the pilot from the engine's internal hum. Operatives planted false sensors in the desert to see if they could detect their own plane. K-39 used bribed air traffic controllers to ignore ghost blips on their screens. The project created fake bird calls to mask the sound of the plane's cooling fans. CIA Technical Services developed a silent fuel pump that made no mechanical clicking. K-39 was the first program to prove that a jet could be quieter than a small private prop plane. A quote from a declassified internal memo from the CIA Office of Research and Development dated 1961. The goal is a plane that doesn't just fly, it haunts. We want the sound of a falling leaf with the speed of a bullet. Quote, a briefing by Kelly Johnson of Lockheed Skunk Works. If the Soviets can hear us, we've already lost. Silence is the only armor that never weighs the pilot down. A declassified letter from a lead K-39 engineer to the director of Central Intelligence. We are essentially trying to build a muffled lightning bolt. The physics say it's impossible. The agency says it's required. A declassified evaluation report on quiet air cavalry techniques dated 1964. The K-39 results prove that the primary enemy of stealth is not the radar dish, but the human ear. A declassified operational summary of the Yo-3A field trials. Again, I don't know the plane or the YO. We have succeeded in making a 6-ton aircraft sound like a distant breeze. Now we just have to make it fly faster than the breeze. And a declassified technical service division doctrine paper. Acoustic stealth is the final frontier of the clandestine overflight. We must own the air without claiming it. And then, of course, quote from a redacted contractor at the Groom Lake facility, meaning this person is an independent contractor. Most likely they can't even say that they were involved, and that's why the name is redacted. That's what happens to a lot of independent contractors. The jet engine is a controlled explosion. Our job is to make that explosion polite. Within the K-39 final technical synthesis, a massive 180 pages titled The 1968 Operation Muted Shadow in Northern Laos are entirely blacked out. These redactions are protected under Exemption B1, B3, and B6. Exemption B1 signifies that the information is classified in the interest of national defense or foreign policy. B3 is the statutory exemption protecting information specifically shielded by other laws, likely the National Security Act of 1947. And B6 protects personal privacy, meaning the names of the pilots and the ground assets involved are still considered sensitive. I suspect these pages detail the direct extraction protocol, the methods used to fly a silent jet into North Vietnamese territory to rescue high-value defectors or downed pilots without the enemy ever knowing a plane was in the area. I also think the redacted portions cover urban overflights of Hanoi, where the K-39 prototypes were used to drop listening devices onto the roofs of government buildings. Most significantly, the redactions likely hide the border penetration failures, incidents where silent planes crashed in hostile territory and were sanitized with thermite charges to leave no trace of the technology. And I'm not the only one with theories. When the sky stops making noise, the imagination fills the silence. For instance, there's the UFO theory. It's a persistent one that claims that many UFO sightings in the 60s were actually K-39 tests. Witnesses reported seeing a craft that moved at high speeds but made no sound, leading to the alien technology myth when it was actually just a very well muffled jet. Then there's the Black Triangle conspiracy theory. Some conspiracy enthusiasts believe that the project evolved into the legendary TR-3B Black Triangle craft, which allegedly uses anti-gravity but is actually the ultimate evolution of the K-39 acoustic dampening tech. Then there's the voice from the sky theory. Fringe speculators suggest that the CIA used these silent planes to project directional audio, the voice of God, onto unsuspecting populations to startle them or deliver psychological messages, making people think they were hearing divine voices from a clear, empty sky. And the vanishing pilot speculation. There is a persistent rumor that one K-39 prototype was so quiet and fly-by-wire advanced that it was accidentally shot down by a U.S. Navy pilot who thought he was chasing a ghost plane because he couldn't hear its engine on his own sensors. Was Project K-39 a success? Tactically, It was a cloak of clouds. Project K-39 was an overwhelming success because it shattered the noise floor barrier, a feat previously deemed physically impossible by the conventional aeronautical community. It proved that a military force could achieve tactical surprise at a low altitude, which fundamentally altered the risk-reward calculus of clandestine reconnaissance. It turned the YO-3A into a night stalker that could loiter over enemy positions for hours, providing real-time intelligence without ever being detected by the area or the ears of the sentries below. It proved that sound suppression was not just an experimental curiosity, but a viable field of engineering, allowing pilots to fly missions that would have been suicide in a standard high decibel aircraft. By the late 1960s, the project reached a pinnacle where the aircraft's acoustic signature was virtually indistinguishable from the background rustle of the wind through the trees. This tactical edge provided a God's eye view of the battlefield without the psychological thunderclap that usually accompanies aerial presence. The tactical victory lay in the creation of acoustic disorientation. By the time an enemy soldier heard the plane, if they heard it at all, the sound was so distorted by the dampening tech that they couldn't tell where it was coming from, leading to a panic and an inability to return fire accurately. It allowed for the zero detection drop of agents in supplies, changing the face of special operations and ensuring that the American intelligence apparatus could reach into the most sensitive corners of the globe with a whisper rather than a roar. Strategically, it was the end of the audible frontier. The program was a success because it forced every nation to rethink the very nature of their early warning system, which for decades had relied heavily on the audio signature of approaching threats. It shifted the strategic focus from radar detection to multispectral awareness, effectively initiating a new arms race in the field of sensor technology. By proving that a jet could be silenced, the CIA ensured that no border was ever truly secure, as the psychological barrier of hearing the enemy coming had been effectively dismantled. It turned the night sky into a clandestine playground where the US could operate with total impunity, collecting data and inserting assets while the world slept in blissful ignorance. This strategic dominance extended beyond simple overflights. It established a precedent for low signature warfare that would eventually lead to the development of the F-117 Nighthawk and the B-2 Spirit. The K-39 program was the spiritual father of modern stealth, demonstrating that the human senses are just as much a target as any electronic radar dish. The long-term strategic cost was the escalation of surveillance. Once the secret was out, or at least once its effects were felt, global powers began investing heavily in infrasound detectors and high-sensitivity seismic microphones, ending the era of the easy overflight. Strategically, Project K-39 may have overplayed its hand, creating a world so quiet that every tiny, unexpected sound is now a potential threat, leading to a state of permanent global tension. It proved that while you can win a strategic victory by mastering silence, you also ensure that the world will never stop listening for the sound of the silence itself. The operational and technological breakthroughs of Project K-39 have evolved into the tools that shape our reality. For instance, Chevron nozzle technology. For humanity today, this logic is a savior for urban life. It powers the sawtooth edges on the engine cowlings of the Boeing 787. By mixing high-speed exhaust with cool bypass air in a controlled turbulent pattern, it significantly reduces the deafening roar of takeoff for millions of people living near major airports. The military applies this to the F-35 Lightning II, using the serrated edges to break up the jet bark during low-level strikes, making the aircraft harder to detect by ground troops until it has already passed. The intelligence community utilizes this breakthrough for covert insertions, enabling transport aircraft to utilize civilian runways in sensitive regions without drawing unwanted attention through the signature thunder of a military-grade jet engine. Composite acoustic shielding. For humanity today, this technology has moved from the wing to the home. These advanced layered materials are now used in soundproof construction and high-end electric vehicles. It ensures that while the world outside may be chaotic, the interior cabin remains a sensory deprivation chamber, free from the mechanical whine of electric motors. The military applies this to submarine tiles, which are designed to absorb sonar pings and internal vibration, essentially turning a massive steel vessel into a black hole beneath the waves. The intelligence community utilizes it for the construction of skiffs, where these specialized linings prevent any audio, from whispers to electronic signals, from leaking out of top secret facilities, rendering them immune to traditional long range microphone eavesdropping. Variable pitch propeller optimization. For humanity today, this is the backbone of the drone revolution. Every commercial delivery drone and cinematography quadcopter uses the logic of optimized blade pitch to minimize the whir that would otherwise cause public nuisance and signal interference. The military applies this to unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, like the MQ-9 Reaper, allowing these massive craft to loiter at 20,000 feet for 24 hours while remaining completely inaudible to the insurgents they are tracking. The intelligence community utilizes it for micro UAVs, tiny reconnaissance drones that can hover outside a high-rise window or fly through a ventilation shaft to record high-fidelity video without being heard by the occupants of the room. Digital noise cancellation algorithms. For humanity today, this is perhaps the most personal legacy of K-39. It is the software engine inside your noise canceling headphones and the echo reduction in your smartphone. By identifying ambient frequencies and projecting an anti-wave, the technology erases the world around you. The military applies this to active noise reduction and combat helmets, allowing tank crews and pilots to communicate clearly despite the 120 decibel environment of a battlefield. The intelligence community utilizes it for advanced audio recovery, where they can take a recording of a meeting held near a loud air conditioner or a busy highway and digitally subtract the noise floor to hear a target's whispered conversation with crystal clarity. The echoes of the silent jet continue to vibrate through the very quiet moment we experience. It was an era that proved that the sound of power isn't always a roar. Sometimes it's the absence of noise. The result was a world where we can no longer trust our ears to tell us what is in the sky above us. The true weight of this operation lies in the way it changed our relationship with the atmosphere. We no longer look at a clear blue sky as empty. We look at it as if it were a canvas of possibility for things we cannot see or hear. The infrastructure built to silence a jet in the 50s has become the infrastructure of our quietest luxuries today. Project K-39 isn't just an aircraft design, it is the blueprint for the invisible age, a world where the most sophisticated technology is the kind that leaves no footprint. This relentless pursuit of silence has led us to a state of environmental vigilance, where we are constantly tuning our sensors to find the missing frequencies. The silent sky has moved from the secret hangars of Groom Lake into the very fabric of our urban design. We have become a society that values acoustic purity, yet we are surrounded by the ghost of the machine that first learned how to hide in the wind. The project proved that the most effective way to dominate a space is to move through it like you were never there, turning the entire planet into a quieter theater of operation, where the only thing louder than a secret is the silence that protects it. If the sky feels too quiet, someone is probably listening. True stealth is not being invisible, it's being unmemorable. In a world of noise, silence is the ultimate luxury and the ultimate weapon. And remember, you don't hear the wind, you hear what the wind hits. Thanks for listening, and join us next time as we examine AE Anvil, the heavy-duty paramilitary training for stay-behind units in Western Europe. We'll look at the Gladio networks of the 1970s, the hidden arms caches buried under the forest of Germany, and the reality of a secret army waiting for an invasion that never came. Join us next time for The Shadow Guard. In the meantime, I'll see you in the archives.